So, it's been 2 years since the release of this Samsung Galaxy A73, and what's interesting is that this is the last of the A70 series from Samsung, which meant there were no A74 and no more number 70 for their A series. So let's find out why Samsung did that. Was it because the phone was too good that it was butchering their flagship smartphones, or was it not good enough? So let's start out with the design and build. Now this was also the time where slim phones were in, and the matte finish at the back also meant that the phone felt great in the hands even when using the phone in one hand. Now the color wasn't something that I was a huge fan of, but eventually I just lived with it. It did gain some attention from people on which exact Samsung phone that I was using. Now the reason why I say that is because this iconic camera array was widely used by Samsung at that time, where it had a signature look of the A series smartphone. Now I almost forgot that the phone comes at a micro SD card slot, and while it was very useful, but since we are all used to not having it in our phones, it didn't really affect me. However, it is good for someone out there who, if you're someone who really needs a phone which has a micro SD card slot, but just so you know, there's no headphones jack in case you're wondering. Now other than that, I love the overall build, the design and the weight of the phone, and surely defines what the A series has always represented, so huge credit goes to this phone when it comes to the overall design and build quality. So the consistency of having great screens was carried over to this A series, especially with this A73 variant. The 6.7-inch Super AMOLED Plus screen was really nice even after 2 years. There was no sign of fading and no noticeable issues when it comes to the overall brightness and sharpness either. Now I also love how the display was also flat, so using the phone daily, especially for multitasking, scrolling from the edges of the screen was very pleasing indeed. And another plus is the fact that the phone has a 120Hz refresh rate. It was one of the very few smartphones at that time, especially with a mid-range segment, that had that high refresh rate on the phone. But the refresh rate is not as adaptive compared to the flagship, so it forces itself to use that high refresh rate all the way. Hence, it will indeed affect the battery life of the phone, but more on my battery life that I got on the phone later on in this video. So when it comes to watching videos on the phone, it had wideband L1 playback quality with HDR10 capabilities, and the overall color accuracy on the phone was really well pronounced, whether or not it's watching videos on Netflix, Disney Plus, Hotstar and YouTube as well. So yes, the display on the A73 was another great positive of the phone after 2 years. Now as for the phone's camera, here's a quick recap of the specs. It has a 108MP f1.8 main camera, which was considered a very high megapixel count 2 years ago on a mid-range smartphone. Then there's a 12MP f2.2 ultra-wide lens, a 5MP 2.4 depth sensor, and a 5MP f2.4 dedicated macro lens. Then the front camera has a 32MP f2.2 lens. Now once again, for an A series phone, the rear cameras did not disappoint at all during the day. So whether or not you're taking a high 108MP image, the ultra-wide lenses, the main lenses, or even the 2x zoom images were really great as seen in these photos. However, if you go to the max 10x zoom, the images was not in best quality, so I wouldn't recommend using that. Then portrait mode on the phone was also quite an interesting find, because whether or not you're using this mode to take pictures of objects or a person, you must wait till the app says that it's ready. Otherwise, you will be getting some blurred image, so keep that in mind. Then the macro mode photos were great if you're looking to take those shots, since there is a dedicated macro lens. Then under low light, the ultra-wide lenses did perform well, even with a low lighted area, which was great to know. Then the main lenses obviously shine the best at night too, with a nice balance of highlights and shadows, even up to 2x zoom, but then again, don't go beyond that, as you will see a reduction of quality as seen in these photos. Then a huge surprise for me was the night portrait mode, because it nailed the focus and the subject to background blur very well, both on objects and even on a person too. Then the selfie cameras during the day was flawless, both for the regular selfie and the portrait mode, especially on the great dynamic range in the blurred background area. Then at night, you really need to keep your hands really steady if you're taking photos under low light, otherwise you will be getting a blurry image, specifically when it comes to the selfie photos. However, the story was a little different when it comes to video, because while the quality was great for the ultra wide and so was the stabilization, the 4K main lenses did not do a very good job when it comes to stabilization unless you turn on the super steady mode, which will go down to 1080p, but I did not do that because I do prefer the 4K video recording instead. And the story was the same when it comes to the rear video quality at night, with decent results on the ultra-wide and great results on the main lens, but not so much on the image stabilization. Then the front video recording could go up to 4K recording, but once again, sacrifices the overall stabilization both during the day and also at night as well. Because 2 years ago, it was one of the very few or perhaps the only mid-range smartphone to have a 4K video recording for the front camera. But anyway, here's a video and an audio test on a vlogging situation so you can be the judge on how it looks and how it sounds. Alright, so one of the best things about the A73 and of course a lot of other Samsung phones is of course the fact that it has 4K video recording. A lot of smartphones these days still stick to 1080p, so this is one of the best things when it comes to the front camera, especially when it comes to the video recording. This is a vlogging test. I personally already know the test last time and I'm sure right now the vlogging test is good. As usual, I like to do my test up in the rooftop area to see how it does, especially when it comes to the audio quality. So this is an audio test and a vlogging test. Test 1 2, test 1 2, test 1 2. So let me know what you think of this vlogging test, and if you guys are enjoying this video so far, a thumbs up would be very much appreciated and a subscription will be lovely too. And thank you very much in advance. Now, as for the phone software, as of the recording of this video, it is updated to Android 14 with One UI version 6.1 skin since the release of One UI version 4.1 when it was first launched 2 years ago. And I didn't have any issues then, and I don't have any issues using the phone right now. As expected, the software on Samsung phones in general, even on this A series, has still been one of the best Android skins for Samsung till date. Now, speaking of being up to date, Samsung did mention that the phone will receive 4 years of Android updates, which means that it will technically receive another 2 more years, so that was great to know. And for those of you who always preferred the Snapdragon chipset over the Exynos, definitely not me because I did not mind the Exynos chipset at all, because this phone uses the Snapdragon 778G chipset, which was perfect when I was using the phone daily, especially when it comes to gaming, so let's talk about that next. So let's dive into something heavy like Genshin Impact. Now, the phone did perform best at medium settings, and the motion blur set to low instead of totally turning off when the phone was first released. And based on our tests, the optimal settings were performed best at medium with 60 FPS, and that was a huge surprise because technically it is better than when the phone first came out. Because surprisingly, the motion blur looked gorgeous in this low settings and it was super fluid during gameplay thanks to the phone's refresh rate. Now, there was no noticeable battery drain and the phone was barely even warm after 15 minutes of continued gaming. But if you insist on playing on the higher settings, you can, but you will get some minor jitters, and this issue will also mainly take on the battery life and making the device hot, so I would just stick to using this phone when it comes to gaming on medium on Genshin Impact. Then switching over to COD Mobile, the best gameplay of the graphic was set to very high and the frame rate set to max, as the Ultra option is not available on the phone compared to the newer phones out right now. But that was totally fine as the BR mode graphic is customizable indeed. Then battery drain was very good too, only dropped about 4% after 20 minutes of gameplay, and the phone felt very usable indeed. So yes, gaming on the A73 was a huge plus, especially given its very comfortable form factor during very long gameplay. So when I first got the phone 2 years ago, the battery life was not good. I was getting about 4 hours plus of screen on time with dark mode turned off and 120Hz refresh rate, but after several updates, Samsung managed to fix the battery drain to give it about 6 hours plus. And now, with heavy gameplay, I was averaging about 5.5 hours, which was super amazing to know. And here's where I felt that not only that the 5000 mAh of battery did show great longevity, but it shows that Samsung software updates did do a significant improvements when it comes to the phone's battery optimization. So for those of you who are worried about updating your software, well, this is a lesson for you to make sure that you always update to the latest software, especially when it comes to Samsung Android smartphones. Now, by the way, if you want the written version of everything mentioned in this video, do head on to our website at www.adamlobo.tv. Now, we also have an official Adam Lobo TV account on Instagram for you to get the best and easy consumable news, so do follow us over there and all the links will be down below as well. So in conclusion, the Samsung A73 remains one of the best smartphones that Samsung has made, especially for the 70 series. It was probably too good that Samsung did not want to come out with a A74, because when it was released, it did not make sense then for you to get a flagship smartphone. So is the phone worth it in year 2024? Hell yeah! especially with the price that is out right now, which I'll leave links down below for you guys to get it. And do let me know which phone that you would like for me to revisit next. And meanwhile, check out my video review of the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus after 5 years over here.